All right, this is recording number 4. Wife, I hope to finish it in this one. We'll see how that goes. Also, I see there's like 5 or 6 views on the other one, so I do have these posted publicly. Um, so that is what it is. Uh, in case anyone else is actually listening, hello and welcome. I am not much of a radio type guy or YouTube guy. These are just recordings because my wife wanted to hear my voice while I'm away for a really long time, and I wanted to share my favorite book series that I've ever read, which is Wheel of Time. It means a lot to me personally, so I want to share it with the girl I love. So I'm gonna get right into it after that, and we're gonna start with chapter 41, which is titled Old Friends and New Threats. So, after going into the palace and getting out, Rand goes back to the inn. He's talking with the innkeeper, Master Gil, and Gil's like, yeah, you didn't meet the queen. Loyal's like, he's ta'veren. He probably met the queen, because fate warps around him. And then Gil's like, oh. So they are talking, and they're basically like, you guys gotta get out of the city. Like, we're starting to get too much attention at that point. Maybe a couple days. And Loyal asks Rand again, like, he's like, I really want to accompany ta'veren and see what, see that happen. See the reality warping and go on an adventure with you. Plus, I like your company. We've bonded over these last few days. And Rand, he's a little skeptical, but he agrees this time. Suddenly, someone comes and gets Master Gil and says there are white cloaks here, and they want to search the inn for someone. And they're like, oh shit. Gil manages to get rid of him. He comes back, and then another maid comes up to Master Gil and is like, there's another lady, but she's actually asking for Rand and Mat by name this time. And Rand's like, oh shit, hopefully there's only one person that actually knows our names that are out here. He goes downstairs, and he finds Moiraine. And Moiraine, Lan, Egwene, and Perrin, and Nynaeve are all there together, and they all go upstairs together, and they find Mat, and he's in his bed still, like, curled up under the blankets. He's like, who are these people? Stuff like that. Nynaeve is like, this guy is sick. I need to treat him. And then Moiraine walks in, and she's like, the hell is going on here? And she like quickly goes up to Mat, and she's like, everyone else stay away, do not get near him. And she literally drags Nynaeve away from Mat. And then Moraine's like, I gotta look at him. And Mat tries to stab her with the dagger. Lan manages to stop it just in time, and Moraine's like, oh, I understand now. It's this dagger. He must have stolen it from Shadar Logoth, and it's going to kill him if we don't do something about it soon. Not only that, but it could cause great damage to others as well. And then she tells him that dark friends can actually sense the evil coming off of Mat. And that's something that was kind of alluded to earlier, because random Mat kept running into dark friends, and so they must have had some way to track them or know that they were nearby. And Rand actually tells Moiraine this, and he's like, I think there are Trollocs nearby. And then Lan's like, there's definitely Trollocs nearby. And they're like, ah, fuck. And they're like, we need to leave. But Moraine's like, okay, yes, but I need to take care of this Mat situation first. And so she sends everyone else out of the room, and she's like, y'all are out. So everyone leaves the room. Oh, and we're going to move into chapter 42, Remembrance of Dreams. So everyone leaves the room, and Rand introduces them all to Loyal, and they're like, oh man, an Ogier. And they're like getting along, asking questions about each other. Loyal's like, yeah, I'm only 90. I'm not actually old enough to leave the steading, but I ran away from home. Like, tee hee hee. But, Loyal's like, I love my books, and I want to come with y'all because I'm very interested in what's going on here, and I've become pretty good friends with Rand while he's been here. After a little bit, Mat comes down with Moiraine, and he looks a little better, but Moiraine says she was not able to sever his ties to the dagger. and he needs to immediately get to Tar Valon so the Aes Sedai can help sever that bond between the two. But she was able to stop the evil spreading to others, and was able to stop what other dark friends were able to sense coming off of Mat. So Moiraine's like, okay, we need to talk. Ogier, can you please get out of here so we can have a private conversation? Rand's like, nope, he's joining us. And Moiraine's like, okay, well, let's have this talk. And so Rand starts telling Moiraine everything that happened, and Moiraine's like, we need to leave. Loial speaks up and starts telling Moiraine and the group about a man who came to his steading at the end of the Aiel War about 20 years ago. The man was talking about the Dark One and said that the Dark One is going to try to blind the eye of the world and kill time itself. Perrin then realizes, I had someone say the same thing. The Tinkers said that an Aiel came to them and gave the same information. And then Perrin starts telling her about the dreams they've been having. And Mat and Rand finally fess up, like, yeah, we're having the dreams too. And Moiraine's pretty pissed. She's like, why did you not tell me? I could have, like, stopped this from happening. She's like, you can prevent Baalzamon from hurting you in your dreams by denying him. Turn away from the dark and he cannot hurt you. But Perrin's like, I already know how to protect myself. And he's, of course, referring to the wolves. And hearing about all this, Loial is like, okay, all three of you have got to be Ta'veren at this point. And Moiraine's like, yep. And so Moiraine comes up with a new plan. Their new goal, leave Camlan, travel north to the Blight, and warn the Green Man of the threat. But, unfortunately, they've already established the city is surrounded by Trollocs that are hiding and trying to find them. So the only solution Moiraine can think of is asking Loial, please, take us to a waygate so we may travel the ways. Loial says no. He says the ways were once a beautiful, basically an alternate way to travel, but they were corrupted many years ago, and they've turned to darkness, and the Ogier are the only ones who even have a chance of navigating the ways. And there is something else. There's something dangerous in the ways, something that could kill all of them. And this thing terrifies Loial to his core, and he refuses to take them in the ways. Chapter 43 is titled Decisions and Apparitions. So they start asking Loial, why won't you take us through the ways? And Moiraine is like, yeah, tell them. And Loial starts talking about how when the men who could channel were trying to escape the Dark One's taint, they went to a steading. And these men gifted the ways to the Ogier, and it's a place where time and space mean very little. You could travel across the continent in a day because distance works differently. And they actually built an entrance to the ways outside of every city that the Ogier built. And by this point in time, we kind of get a grasp that the Ogier built a lot of the major cities, Camlan being one of them. However, he said during the War of 100 Years, the ways were corrupted, and they lost their light, and people started going mad as they came out. And everyone agreed the ways are no longer safe. Moiraine, though, speaks up and essentially convinces everyone there isn't another way. And Loial agrees, all right, I will try my best, and I will guide you through the ways. Rand also has a conversation with Egwene. It happened a little earlier when they were talking about Rand meeting the royal family, Elaine and Gawain and Galad. I don't know. I'm bad with the pronunciations. And she like doesn't believe that this happened, and Rand's like, man, I wish Perrin were here right now, like talking to her, he would know how to talk to Egwene better than me. So Rand thinks Perrin knows how to deal with women a lot better than he does. And so they all go to bed, and Rand has a dream, and he encounters Baalzamon again with the flames in his eyes, and he sees these little figures in front of him, one with a wolf, one with a dagger, and one with a sword. And Baalzamon talks to Rand and says, I can give you power beyond imagination, or damn you for eternity if you refuse to serve me. He says, the battle between us is as old as time itself, and you have no chance of winning it. Rand denies Baalzamon, and Baalzamon's like, whatever. So Rand destroys the figures, and he feels like a little stab as he hits the point of one. And eventually he wakes up and notices Mat is also waking up at the same time. And Mat clearly had the same dream. And Rand has a kind of a revelation at this point. If Baalzamon is doing this to all three of them, he doesn't know which of the three boys he's actually looking for. Rand notices he has a splinter in his hand, so just like when he stabbed the thorn in a previous dream and his hand was bleeding, he has a splinter in his from this time. And Moiraine comes in and says, time to go. Chapter 44 is titled The Dark Along the Ways. So Loial says he can sense where the Waygate is, and so they all start heading that way in the middle of the night. There's white cloaks watching the inn, and so they sneak out without being seen through the back. And eventually they reach the place where Loial says he thinks the Waygate is, and it's in a cellar. And Loial is very upset. He's like, this used to be a beautiful grove with trees everywhere. We always had these groves, and the humans just cut them down to make this a cellar. And he's kind of angry, but also very sad about it. And so they walk up to this door, and it's got these leaves on it. And there's a bunch of them, but they take one of these leaves and move it, or remove it from the door, and suddenly it opens, and there's a little shimmer whoosh, in front of them, and blackness behind it. And so they go in slowly, one by one, entering into the ways. And when they get in, they place the leaf back on the door, and get inside before it closes. And then they are now trapped in the ways. And so it turns out it's like the ways, it's pure blackness. The only light source in existence is the torch and lanterns they brought with them. And it looks like the ways are like islands, but they're connected by these bridges. And they get the feeling that if someone were to fall off the edge of one of these, sideless paths of bridge, you would probably fall for eternity and never hit anything because it's infinite blackness all around. And so Loial goes to these islands, and he tries to read these signposts that are in an Ogier language. And he's like, we gotta go this way, we gotta go this way. And every single island they get to, Loial has to consult these guides. And they travel for a very long time, many islands, and eventually, after days, Loial says, and days in like total blackness, Loial says, oh no. And they're like, what? The bridge that they needed to travel over has collapsed. Chapter 45 is titled, What Follows in Shadow. Loial is pretty upset that the corruption in the ways has gotten so far it can destroy an entire path. So he's like, we could just leave at the nearest Waygate I could find. And Moiraine says, no, we have to go to Fal Dara, which is the closest city to the Blight where we must end up. So Loial's like, all right, I'll find us an alternate route. And they keep going and going, and eventually they're like, there's no way to tell day or night, but Lan seems to know when day and night are internally, and so he tells them when it's time to eat, when it's time to sleep, and when it's time to go. Eventually, after some sleeps and waking up, Lan says out loud, someone's following us. But they don't seem to be trying to get closer, they're just following. And as they continue, at one of the islands that they stop at, they find evidence that Trollocs were in here. So now they know, oh, Trollocs know how to use the ways. And they know this because the Trollocs carved some of their language onto one of the guideposts, indicating what direction they needed to go. And as they keep going, they find them. A group of remains, the dead Trollocs, who are kind of torn to shreds a little bit. Very nasty. And they don't really know what did it, except Loial does. It's Mashin Shin, the Black Wind. It's a wind that goes through the windless ways, and it eats out your very souls. And it is, to Loial, the most terrifying thing in existence, it seems. And he basically announces, this is why I don't want to be here. The Mashin Shin could get us at any moment. And it's clearly what destroyed all these Trollocs. After more time, Rand notices there's a faint sound on the wind, and Loial says, there is no wind in the ways, and announces Mashin Shin has found us. And Moiraine asks, how many more bridges do we need? Loial says 2, and they start sprinting with their horses and whatnot. Moiraine eventually sees the leaf to open the waygate, she sees the door, and the leaf that she needs to open the waygate is gone. Moiraine doesn't know another way to open the door, and so she destroys something on it. I'm kind of not remembering super well, but she destroys something on it that opens the door. Moiraine turns around and uses the one power to create a massive power barrier to stop Mashin Shin from getting at them. She is exhausting herself, and everyone is trying to get through the door as quick as she can. Moiraine steps out backwards, and the Black Wind tries to follow her and bulges out against the shimmer, and whoosh, ricochets back in. It can't leave the ways. Moiraine is even letting her otherwise stoic demeanor lapse because she is so terrified of what just happened. And she's wondering, like, could this have even tainted the female half of the one power? So the door is gone, actually, on the waygate, and so Moiraine basically says, well, we have to continue to the city and ask the Lord of the City to just seal up this waygate so that nothing can get in or out. Chapter 46 is titled Fal Dara. So they all notice the land here seems dead. Farms have been abandoned. There's winter, like remnants just sticking to the land, right? Trees that have split like lightning struck them. Rand tries to convince Loial, Egwene, and Nynaeve to stay in the city when they get there while the rest of them go to the Blight, and they're like, no. Stupid. Soon they reach Fal Dara, and it's a large city, but it's definitely significantly smaller than Caemlyn. And it's like a fortress. Giant walls, everything designed to keep out Trollocs here. They say they have to pull back the hoods on their cloaks so that their faces can be seen, because Fades are the ones that hide their faces here, and the guards are on the lookout for them. And people seem to recognize Lan, and people ask him if the Golden Crane will fly again, and Lan doesn't seem too pleased about whatever the heck this question means. He just kind of continues on. Eventually, they come across a man who says the Lord is ready to receive them, which means Lord Egelmar, the guy in charge of Fal Dara, is ready to have a meeting with them. And that soldier, who introduces himself as Ingtar, also asks if the Golden Crane will fly again, and Lan tells him Malkir is dead, and he has another purpose right now. They find out that Fal Dara is actually preparing to head to Tarwin's Gap and are forming an army to go take out the Trolloc hordes there. And they try to convince Moiraine and Lan to go because it's not looking well. But Moraine's like, no, we have to do this other thing. And so he's like, okay, Aes Sedai is saying that that's important. Got it. We can send you some men. And Moraine's like, nope, we have to go on ourselves. So they Lord Egelmar just gives them dinner, gives them rooms, talks with them, and yeah. And he also says there's someone actually asking about you guys. And Moiraine's like, who? And the man is brought to them, and it's the peddler, Paden Fang. And at this point, they recognize that Fane appears to be mad. And they identify, oh, Paden Fane is a dark friend, which is something at this point you kind of would have suspected, but it's pretty much confirmed here. And so Moiraine says, we need to interrogate him. And it basically came out that Fane was the one following them in the ways. Chapter 47 is titled More Tales of the Wheel. While Lan and Moiraine go to interrogate Paden Fane, the rest of the group is still having dinner with Lord Egelmar, and Egwene asks him, what's this deal with Lan and this golden crane, and why do people call him the Lord of the Seven Towers? And Lord Egelmar actually tells them, he's like, so up here in Shienar, actually north of Shienar, even closer to the Blight, was the nation of Malkir about 50 years ago. The king of Malkir were great brothers. They loved each other, very much, but one of the wives was jealous that she was not the wife of the king and wanted her husband to become the king. And so this wife convinced her husband to go into the Blight and go kill the Dark One. He tried to and was slaughtered. At this point, chaos ensued, and there was a civil war in Malkir. One of the two people, or the person basically leading the civil war, ended up being a dark friend, and he let Trollocs into Malkir, and the nation, having just lost that man's the brother of the king and all of his soldiers, was not prepared to deal with them, and so Malkir was lost. However, as a last move, the king and queen managed to get their baby, Lan, to safety south in Shienar. And so that baby was Lan. And Lan grew up learning about what happened, and more of the land that was previously Malkir was swallowed by the Blight, by the Dead Land and the Trollocs. And so Allan Madragoran, as his full name is known as the last king of Malkir, but he's a king without a land and engaged in a war that he cannot win. And Nynaeve takes this story very hard, and everyone can tell, and she's like having trouble swallowing, and she's very nervous, but eventually Moiraine and Lan come back and cut it off, and they're like, so Paden Fane is the most evil thing I have ever seen in history. He is far beyond just being a regular run-of-the-mill dark friend. According to Paden Fane was summoned to Sheo Ghul, where the Dark One's imprisoned 3 years ago, and received instructions from Baalzamon himself. He was told to hunt the 3 boys. And he was essentially tortured and treated like an animal by the Myrddraal. And at that point, Fane decided he hated the Dark One and wanted to be free, but the curse that he was under from Baalzamon would not allow it. He feels a compulsion to find the boys, and he has no alternative. So there came a point where he fled Sheo Ghul and everything, and he fled the Myrddraal, but he couldn't get rid of that urge, and so he continued to follow them. And this scares everybody, but they know they still have to continue on to the Blight to find the Eye of the World. And so Moiraine's like, well, we're leaving tomorrow. And from this conversation, you also gather Fane is the one that brought the Trollocs to the 2 rivers in the first place. Chapter 48 is titled The Blight. As they travel north, they enter what was once Malkir and recognize that the land has definitely been swallowed by the Blight. The cold that was in Shienar is now replaced by a damp heat, and it seems to be affecting the minds of people. They're somewhat depressed, honestly. And Loial super mad that all trees are pretty much gone. He clearly loves trees. He's got a passion for trees. And yeah, so they keep going, and Lan's like, do not touch anything. There's things here that can kill you without you even recognizing it. So eventually they keep going and they find a place to camp, and Rand's having trouble sleeping. And as he's struggling to sleep, he overhears Lan and Nynaeve talking. And Nynaeve confesses all of her feelings to Lan and asks Lan to marry her. But Lan refuses. And through this conversation, you gain he clearly does love Nynaeve. They've bonded over their trip. But he says, I cannot marry you. I refuse to marry someone only to make them a widow, anticipating his own death. And Nynaeve cries. Chapter 49 is titled, The Dark One Stirs. As they progress, they see even more corruption, more blight, to the point where Rand's like, it seems like even the trees will be hostile. And Lan says they might actually be hostile. And soon creatures start to attack them, and they're shooting arrows and using the one power and slicing with swords and killing countless creatures, and they decide we have to run. We must run for the mountains, and the creatures keep growing in number, and they're going to be overwhelmed, and then eventually the creatures retreat. Lan says he hears worms approaching. We don't really know what that is, but it sounds bad if all the other creatures of the Blight are running. And so they keep trying to get to this mountain pass because the worms fear that area for some reason. And they run into it, and they keep running and running. And as they cross a crest, they realize the Blight is gone. It's somewhat green, even. And they realize we found the home of the Green Man. And the Green Man comes out to greet them. And he appears to be almost like a man-shaped plant creature. He's described as woven vines and leaves, green and growing, hair as grass flowing to his shoulders. His eyes are huge hazelnuts, his fingernails acorns, green leaves creating his tunic and trousers, and his boots being made of bark, butterflies swirling around him on his fingers, shoulders, and face, and a deep fissure across his temple. And in that area, the vines are withered. The Green Man seems to recognize the Ogier, and he recognizes Moraine, who has apparently been here before, and then also recognizes that Perrin is a wolf brother. He also recognizes Rand and calls him a child of the dragon, as someone that is one of the people of the dragon. Although he seems confused by the fact that Rand is actually carrying a sword. We don't really know why that would be confusing to him, but it was. We also don't know what a child of the dragon would mean at this point. Chapter 50 is titled Meetings at the Eye. The Green Man agrees to take them to the Eye of the World and starts telling them as they walk about how it was created during the time of madness and how 100 Aes Sedai died creating this part of the Dark One's prison. Nynaeve wonders why Moraine has brought them here at all, and Moraine says that the ta'veren will have to face the Dark One's power here. And as they get close, Rand feels saidin, the male half of the one power, without the taint, but he gets scared because saidin, it's starting to feel weird. It makes his skin crawl. And then two men approach them from away, and one looking incredibly old, and the other says that Mat has guided them here, presumably talking about the darkness that he was expelling before. Lan asks who they are, and they introduce themselves as Aginor and Bathamel, two of the Forsaken. The Forsaken, they're by this point it's well established, and maybe I've talked about this already, but it's well established that the Forsaken, of which there are 13, were 13 incredibly powerful channelers from a past age that turned to the Dark One and reveled in his power and hope for eternal life. And all 13 of them were imprisoned inside the Dark One's prison, but it appears two of them have escaped. Lan starts fighting Agenor. Nynaeve tries to attack Agenor, but Balthamil steps in, stops her. Rand tackles Egwene so that she can't be caught, and Agenor is like, you should get used to being on your knees before the Forsaken. The Green Man comes back and is furious at what he finds here, and he demands that the two men leave. Agenor says, just be glad we're not focusing our attention on you. The Green Man attacks, and he successfully kills Balthamil. The Balthamil tries to burn the Green Man, right? And the Green Man wraps himself around the Forsaken, so while he's burning the Forsaken, Balthamil is being eaten alive by the plants and the fungus and the death mushrooms growing in him, and they die together. With only Agenor left to contend with, Moiraine tries to fight him and tells everyone to run, and they do. Moiraine screams as they try to get away. Chapter 51 is titled Against the Shadow. Since everyone ran in different directions, Rand's on his own. He comes across to the top of a hilltop where there's nowhere else to go but the cliff, and suddenly Agenor is there, walking up the hill. And it is at this time that Rand sees something. Even though he knows there's nothing there, he sees a glowing rope stemming from Agenor, connected to something far away. And the rope is pulsing, and Agenor seems to be growing stronger every time that this pulse happens. And a little bit of this thread starts coming to Rand, and Rand feels warmth and light, and Agenor shouts, "You shall not have it! It is mine!" And flames shoot out of his mouth and eyes, and he screams. Rand is blinded by a moment in his mind, and suddenly stands in a mountain pass, the end of a battle being nearby, and he sees the banners of Fal Dara and Shi'Enar and some of the other nations, and they're fighting. Humans on one side, the Shadow Spawn consisting of Drakkar, Trollocs, and Myrddraal on another, and he feels the sun and a clear sky, and suddenly lightning strikes every Drakkar, and he falls on his knees screaming as a wall of fire envelops the entire Trolloc army, leaving it, at least taking out a significant number of them, and Rand's skull starts vibrating, saying only the Chosen One can do what must be done. Then the human side of this battle that Rand is suddenly seemingly a part of or watching, starts charging, and Rand, realizing, oh no, they're charging towards me, I'm gonna get run over, he takes a step and is surrounded by darkness. And as he walks, he reaches a door, and when he enters, he finds himself in the place where he was being confronted in his dreams, and he sees Baalzamon seated at the fireplace, and he also has a cord stemming from him, although his seems to be black, not light. And he tells Rand, you have one option, kneel. And Rand says no. And he shows, suddenly a woman appears, and Baalzamon says, this is your mother, and the father of lies is stronger than he once was. We can have her again. And she disappears screaming, and Rand, in rage, finds himself holding a sword made of pure light, and Baalzamon shouts, you cannot wield it so until you've been taught. You will destroy yourself. And Rand cuts the black cord from his back, and he hurls into the fireplace, and Rand's cord gets narrower and narrower, and he walks over to Baalzamon, and flames fill the entire room, and Rand falls through the blackness, and is struck with a force, feeling like jelly, screaming from the fire raging within himself, and the hungry cold burning without end. Chapter 52 is titled, There is Neither Beginning Nor End. Rand wakes up on the cliff where he started and sees the burnt corpse of the Forsaken Agenor, and he starts shouting, Shaitan is dead, which is supposedly the name of the Dark One, something sort of like Harry Potter, where he who shall not be named, you don't say his name, or it draws the Dark One's attention to you. But it doesn't matter to Rand, because Shaitan is dead. He can't do anything. There is no more need for this caution. And he starts sprinting, reaching the clearing and finding Moraine and Nynaeve, and he tells them what happened. And Moraine explains that these two Forsaken were probably near the surface of the prison, and as the Dark One's prison weakened, they were the first to be able to escape. And Rand says, I killed Shaitan, and she's like, no, call him the Dark One, or at least Ba'alzamon. And she seems a little skeptical. But then Rand talks about how, well, he doesn't talk about, he realizes inside, wait, how did I do that? Oh my god, I was wielding the one power. And you kind of realize at this point, if you hadn't already, that long ago when he and Mat were fleeing, they were confronted by Dark Friends, and lightning crashed into their building, killing all the Dark Friends and opening a hole in the wall. That must have been Rand. And when he was getting sick, that must have been him coming to terms, and his body coming to terms with his ability to channel, just like what happened to Nynaeve and Egwene in their childhoods. And so we've established Rand can channel the one power, and by extension is destined to go mad because of it. The others come back, and they're apparently they found a cavern and a chest inside of it. And it has a bundle of cloth and some pottery in it. And everyone's like, oh, it's good to see you guys. But by this point, Rand has already told Nynaeve, Egwene, and Moraine that he can channel. And so they're a little more like, a little more uncomfortable. And Mat looking at this pottery and stuff, he's like, why were these things not destroyed? They're just like little thingies. And Moraine takes them and puts these two half circles together, and it creates the ancient symbol of the Aes Sedai. It's the flame of Tar Valon joined with the dragon's fang. And in this symbol, you can kind of imagine the symbol for yin and yang, right? Good and evil, white and black. Half of the disc seems to be white, half seems to be black. So the black would imply it's the dragon's fang, and the white half being the flame of Tar Valon. And so Moraine tells them this is Cuendillar, and I don't know how to pronounce it, I'm sorry, Cuendillar. It is made with the one power, and it is something that nothing has the capability of breaking, not even the one power itself once it's made, and which begs the question, how was this broken? And Moraine says that this disc is one of 7 seals to the Dark One's prison, meaning the seal on the prison of the Dark One is broken, and the prison is weaker. Mat opens another chest that they brought out and finds a curled golden horn, and Moraine is like, oh my god, that has to get to Ilion now. And Moraine hands the horn to Loial, who reads, and because there's language written on it, it's in the old tongue, and he reads it, and it says, translated, the grave is no bar to my call. Lan, almost like in awe of what he realized, says this is the horn of Valir. And Moraine starts wondering, maybe the Eye of the World here was made to guard these items. They find one more item in there, a piece of cloth, and as they unfold it, they see it is the banner of Lews Therin Telamon, the banner of the dragon. And it is a picture of a dragon, so you can pretty much picture that. Chapter 53 is titled The Wheel Turns. As they leave, the cool breeze that was in the Eye of the World has been replaced by a heat, and they realize the blight is coming in very quickly. The Eye of the World is no more, and it will be swallowed soon. Loial, though, is quite upset about this. He doesn't think it's right that the corpse of the Green Man should fall to the blight. And he walks over, and he starts singing. And it sounds as if the earth itself is singing. And when he's done, the leaves seem to grow greener. and there are flowers circling that area, standing straight. And he says the blight will not touch at least this small section now. And the group leaves the eye of the world, and as they go, nothing attacks them, nothing comes near them, and they continue south. As they approach Faldara again, men wave at them, laughing with joy, as they see grass growing under their feet for the first time in ages, and they talk about a great victory that they had in Tarwin's Gap. They say that the light itself took on flesh and fought for them, and the Creator himself walked there, but appeared as a man. So what he did could not possibly be. And Moiraine, realizing what has happened, that it was Rand, just says, "The wheel weaves as the wheel wills." They make sure that Paden Fain is still secure in the dungeon, and she shows the Horn of Valir to Lord Egelmar, but refuses to use it to go up and fight at Sheol Ghul right now, because it is not time for the last battle. So as time progresses, a week passes, and Rand is doing tons of practice with the sword with Lan, and he meets Egwene, and he tells Egwene he's going to leave. And when she asks if he'll be going home, he says he'll never go home again. And Moiraine, separately, in another area entirely, in a garden, she starts looking at the seal, the broken, seal and everything, and she's not looking at the seal. She's looking at a small stone she has, and is thinking to herself, this is an old trick she learned when she first started using the power, and she listens to people far away through the stone. And she smiles to herself, clearly listening to Rand's conversation, and whispers to herself, the prophecies will be fulfilled, and the dragon has been reborn. It's also worth mentioning at this point that Rand has decided never to touch Saidin again. It's too dangerous, and it will drive him mad. So, that is the end of this book. I hope you enjoyed it. The second book is titled The Great Hunt, and spoilers, the Dark One is not dead. And by the way, book 2, in my top 3 favorite books. I love book 2 so much. It's so good. Book 2 and book 6. 6 is definitely my favorite. Oh, Dumai's Wells. I can't wait to get there. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm just gushing a little bit since we finished the book. When I get to Dumai's Wells, if I make it to book 6, I'm just going to read that entire chapter. It's really long, but my God, it's just so good. I can't not. All right. But that was that was Eye of the World. I hope it was enjoyable love. Bye.